Welcome to Porch Play Chats, sponsored by the American Association for the Child's Right to Play, or more affectionately shortened to IPA USA. IPA USA is a USA affiliate of the International Play Association, and you can find both IPA information on IPA USA and IPA World on our website at ipausa.org. If you go up to that top right corner of the website, you can subscribe to our YouTube channel, be a friend on our Facebook page, follow us on Instagram, and join Spotify for free, because Porch Play Chats are available to you free, and there's over 200 of them. And every Monday and one, if you subscribe to YouTube, will magically appear in your feed every Monday. Spotify, you can join for free, and then all of the Porch Play Chats will also be available on Spotify, so you can listen to them as you're driving or however you want to do that. So Porch Play Chats are one of the ways that IPA USA advocates for play. There are many others, and so if you go to our website, you'll see all the things that we're doing. I'm Deb Lawrence, and I'm president of IPA USA, and with me on the porch is Stephanie Goloway. Hi, Stephanie.
Hi, Deb.
Stephanie is a lifelong educator and advocate for play, storytelling, and imagination. She's taught preschool and elementary school and special education, as well as been a children's librarian and a professional storyteller. She is now Professor Emerita of Education at the Community College of Allegheny County in Pittsburgh, and the author of Happily Ever Resilient, Using Fairy Tales to Nurture Children Through Adversity. And you can get that from Red Leaf Press. And so one of the things that I love about Stephanie on the porch is she's really trying to get us back to using those fairy tales as a cornerstone of building children's resiliency. So this time we're talking about playing with fairy tales. And so I'm really excited about how she's going to help you. Sometimes you'll go, oh, I don't have a fairy tale theme, or, oh, I have a fairy tale theme, but I only want to do one. But I mean, there's so many opportunities to embed fairy tales in children's daily and weekly experience, just based on what is emerging in the classroom. Is that what you would agree with?
I 100% agree with that. So yeah, I think one of the things that I have fought against for years is the idea of a fairy tale week, because it's like a fairy tale a day, and there's no, I mean, it's just like if you choose a different, any theme, and you just want to like hit so many different stories and so many different activities, and children don't have an opportunity to really do deep dives and explore both what the story or the book means to them and what they can do with the activities. So I thought today we'd talk a little bit. I'll give you an example of a fairy tale, and how you might choose a fairy tale based on what your kids are in the classroom are doing, what you're seeing, the themes that you see them emerging from their play, whether it's their schemas or whatever, and just kind of say, how could you have the children start to lead you into exploring a fairy tale and what that might look like, integrating it into play.
Well, and I think that's such a practical way to do it. Instead of saying, oh, I need to find a way to embed fairy tales, but I'm not quite sure where to start. This is like the starting point of using the children, as Beth Boz tells us, the children are the curriculum. And as Lillian Katz tells us, you need to not just do surface stuff, you need to delve deeply. So those two sort of leaders in the field should be driving what we're doing in the classroom. And so can you give us an example of something that you may have seen in a classroom and how you could take that and bring in a fairy tale?
Sure. So I was thinking about a first grade class that I had a number of years ago, that I came home from work every day just exhausted the first week, and I couldn't figure out what it was. And then the principal said, I need a tally of how many males and how many females are in your class. And I counted, I had 17 boys
and
8 girls.
Okay.
So I started thinking about that class and what their energy was like that first week of school. And silly me that I hadn't noticed that was the composition of the class. But I kind of started with that class and thinking about this big 6-year-old boy energy and how I could have used I did use a lot of fairy tales with that group, but like that's where it kind of started with. So they are, so you could think about a 4, 5, 6-year-old group of kids, any age, with a lot of bold physical energy is kind of where I'm thinking. And the story that popped into my head was Jack and the Beanstalk.
Yes.
We tend to think of fairy tales as like the princesses and all of that because that's kind of where Disney has taken us. But Jack and the Beanstalk is a story that actually there are variants all over the world, but the most familiar ones are more from European culture. And there are multiple variants, picture book variants of the story. So it's an example of a good story to start with, because as we were talking about, if you just read children a book once and then have them do some activities. One of my mentors, Dr. Jeanette Gallagher, who worked with Piaget, said for representational thinking, you need to give children lots of opportunities to rehear stories, reimagine stories, rework all of that. So most fairy tales that have multiple picture books to me are a great place to start because you can let them dig more deeply into the story, but give them different opportunities to explore it through their representational thinking, and which of course supports literacy as well as play, as well as social and emotional development. So there's that spiel. All right.
That's
so
a nutshell of why you should do it.
Yeah, that's a nutshell of the connection with literacy and language development, which to me, one of the advantages, I'm all about resilience. And I think that we should really focus on resilience as our primary focus for education, because we all need to be resilient. Pretty much everybody learns how to read. Not everybody becomes resilient to the extent that they need in order to help them overcome the challenges that they face. So, but you can't just do social and emotional stuff in the classroom. We know that. So being able to also develop literacy, I think, and language is super important for us as educators. So that's the literacy piece of it. And all right, so you have the story, you're reading, you read it, and the kids resonate with it. Because what do we know about Jack? I mean, he is the epitome of initiative, which is one of the protective factors for resilience. So I keep yammering about that. We've got relationships, initiative, executive functions, self-regulation, and cultural affirmation. So those protective factors for resilience, that everything that we want to do in a classroom, in my opinion, can connect with those. So you got Jack, and he's like, where does he start out with? Relationships. He loves his mother. What's wrong with him? That's a primary relationship that children relate to. He loves his mom. He goes off. She asks him to sell the cow. He swaps the cow for magic beans because, of course, that would make her happy. No, not so much. Throws the beans out the window. The beanstalk grows, and then he defeats the giant and makes them rich, and they live happily ever after. I mean, that's your nutshell.
That's the nutshell. Yeah.
That's your nutshell of the story, in case anybody had forgotten. So how do you take that story if the kids are interested in it, and how would you know that they might be? I mean, to me, it's that if I see kids who are really exploring climbing, height, they're building high things, they want to get to the top of the ladder all the time, they're on the monkey bars, they're doing all of these physical things, they want to climb up on chairs. Those are the kinds, if they're working with those schemas of exploring a height, then that's one way you could match Jack and the Beanstalk with say, let me see where this story goes. So what kinds of things can you do? I know there's a big push against themes in teaching, because they tend to be very adult focused. The teacher picks the theme and comes up with all the little activities. So I'm not advocating so much for that. But I
Mhm.
do think that helping kids to make connections with both their own interests and with their with the stories that they're reading or playing in their classroom supports the development of representational thinking and supports their cognitive ability to be able to form that network of understanding that is the basis for all of our thinking. So I'm okay with like making those connections. So we know that climbing up the slide is the bugaboo of
Yeah,
childhood education. It's one of those things that play people are constantly advocating for, and many educators fear worse than
I know. I don't know.
the drag. I don't really understand this, but so I thought we'd start with let's talk about reading Jack and the Beanstalk. Climbing up a slide is a natural activity connected with that. And we know that climbing up slides is super good for children's gross motor, their fine motor, all of that. And I'm going to talk about how it also contributes to resilience. And if you are a teacher who is super scared of, like, I don't know, the disasters that may follow from climbing up a slide, this is a way of kind of introducing that into your curriculum without making it, we can now climb up the slide. You can give it a shot, because what is more aligned with Jack climbing the beanstalk in our is climbing up the slide. All right. So you say, all right, we're going to climb up the slide. How does that contribute to resilience as far as relationship goes? One of the elements of relationships is being able to, that young children especially have a hard time with, and apparently
Some
adults
adults do.
is taking another person's perspective, seeing things from another person's point of view. And we know both the physical point of view, but also the social and the emotional point of view. Kids have a really hard time with it. So if you're going to allow kids to climb the beanstalk on your playground, they have to, you can set the parameters of, okay, you can do this, but if you're at the top of the slide, you have to look to make sure that no one's coming up the slide. And if you're at the bottom of the slide, you have to look to the person to make sure no one's coming down. And if you see someone up there, say, hey, I'm climbing the beanstalk. Wait a minute, can you get down, please? And so you're encouraging the kids to, one, pay attention to each other, and two, communicate what their needs are. So that's how it ties into relationships. Initiative, I mean, come on, self-efficacy is part of it. Like, how great do kids feel when they climb up a slide, when they do a physical task? I mean, that's kind of one of the things about risky play that's so important, is we need to give children the opportunity to take safe risks, to help them feel as though they have great ideas and they can act on them. And if they start to slide down the slide because they don't quite have it yet, they can problem solve and figure out, where do I put my body? How do I hang on? What do I do if this doesn't work the first time? Do I try it again? And for something as high attractiveness as climbing a slide, they will. Kids who don't have the perseverance to keep going on something that's a challenge often will, like, if they're given a challenge they're really interested in, that's how that perseverance and that willingness to keep going develops. So they'll climb that slide. Executive functions. They are, just with climbing the slide, if you think about the inhibitory control, which is that ability of ours to tamp down like any fear factor or emotions that like what we know we want to be doing, the underlying emotions that are getting in the way. Executive functions help us to just kind of tamp that down, to keep focused on what we want to do. So that little, like, oh my gosh, what happens if children can get practice overcoming? The more practice they get with using these kinds of skills, the more their brain becomes wired to be able to do it. Self-regulation ties in there, because you have to be self-regulated and keep focus if you're climbing up a slide. You know, I mean, it's just like you lose your focus and you're going to slide down. You also have to not zip up the slide before you look and pay attention. You can't zip down the slide before you look and pay attention. If you get frustrated and you start to slip that back down, you might want to regulate your emotions and not burst into a hot mess of tears because you're Jack. You're Kate, because there is a female version of Jack and the Beanstalk.
Yay.
And so like you're Molly Whoopie, and like you're strong and you're courageous and you got to like overcome all of these things, and you're gonna you just have to keep trying it. And as far as cultural affirmation,
Oh,
I think we always think of culture as like the big capital C. And so, and there, as I said, the story's told all over the world, but there are not a lot of picture book versions except for pretty Eurocentric ones. But what are we doing in our classroom? If we're reading lots of versions of Jack and the Beanstalk because kids are fascinated with it, and you were doing all of these activities, then fee, fi, fo, fum
oh,
becomes part of your classroom culture, and you can use it for many different things. You can start by using it saying, okay, everybody, it's time to line up really quietly by the door. Here comes the giant. Fee, fi, fo, fum. And that's a lot more fun than saying, I'm flicking the lights on and off. I'm flicking the lights on, and boys and girls, it's time for us to line up to go outside. So you're tapping into their imagination. You're tapping into a story that they want, and then they're going to start using those little cultural connections in their own play. And they'll start calling for, I mean, in my experience, like once kids glom onto one of these like little songs or rhymes or a way of images, if it's meaningful to them, then they're going to start incorporating into their play inside and outside. And so you're able to start using all of the imagery in a story to create your own culture within a classroom that helps kids feel like they are part of something bigger, which is what cultural affirmation and resilience is all about, is feeling that you're part of something bigger. So that's just with the slide. Like,
my God. With the slide. And if you're a teacher that's like, oh my God, I can't do that, it's too dangerous. No one is saying you can't stand by the slide.
oh no, of course.
Right.
Of course.
Stand by the slide. Just try not to interfere. And I mean, you could be there and coach if you give them enough time to try to figure it out on their own. But
Sure.
if that will help you, so that you can do reminders, gentle reminders. Oh, you want to climb the slide? I see that. What do we need to do? I didn't see you look at the top of the slide. So, you can do those because you're going to tell them once and they're not going to remember it. So they're going to need
100%.
that support from you. So if it helps, then you can stand by the slide. And I remember the first time I was on the playground and children wanted to go up the slide. And so I wasn't the director then. So I kind of looked around, see if anybody was looking out the and I said, okay, let's try it one at a time. And let's just climb up the slide today. And I swear to you, it was joyous. Sometimes they would say, I'm falling. And I'd say, what do you need to do? How can you keep yourself from falling, as they were going up the slide? But I mean, the muscle strength and the balance that they need. Yesterday on a Porch Play Chat, which these aren't in order, but look for the Stacy Binge one. She's very much into preparing children's bodies for future academic rigor. And she said, if you don't have that core strength, then your shoulders aren't strong enough, and your upper arms aren't strong enough, and your hands aren't strong enough in order to hold that pencil steady. And so she said we should just be doing big body play a lot. And this is a perfect example of all of the different muscles and their balance that they have to use to get up that crazy slide. So it became so popular that some kids would say, well, I want to go down the slide. And I said, okay. And we weren't doing Jack and the Beanstalk. I wish I thought about that. I said, okay, on Tuesdays and Thursdays, we can go down the slide. And on Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays, we'll go up. So, we learned the days of the week. What day is it? Oh,
Right. What?
and not the stupid calendar, but we did it when we went outside. We sang the days of the week song. What day is it today? And then, so what can we do on the slide? And so they just self-regulation, all of that initiative. Amazing.
It is. And even like, as you were talking about what Stacy's work is about, I think like to get right back to body awareness, we know that when children don't have lots of big body play in their early childhood years, they don't even know where their body parts are. And so when I would find kids who were just like,
Yeah.
it would be like, where are your feet? Can you feel your feet? Okay, you feel you know where your feet are, and just giving them those kinds of cues to help them. Where's your knee? Can you feel your knee? Because is your, and giving them, helping them to pay attention to where the different parts of their body are so that they can then connect with them, feel them, and then move them. And, I mean, there's a whole body of work with big body play that is so critical, not just to, I mean, we don't care if they're athletes. We care if they can be successful in school and self-regulated and be able to sit in a chair once it's time when they're in an elementary school, and be able to sit in a good posture with holding a pencil and not flop all over the place.
Flopping all over.
All
Right.
So
And so I
yeah.
think what we have to realize is that kind of support from a teacher is going to be much more instrumental in development than if you say, please sit still in the circle. Right? And so I think what we have to shift when we should provide support from, I'm going to tell you where to play, what to do, how long to stay there, and when to rotate, to how can I help this child become more resilient? How can I help this child develop physically, emotionally, socially, cognitively? And what support does this child need in order to make that happen? Instead of what can I do for this group to get them ready? Right. So, teaching is such you have to be, it's such an, you have to be really able to finesse, right? And teachers are well trained, but sometimes they feel that pressure from what's happening up above. So that's where your resilience as a teacher has to come in, saying, I know I'm doing what's right for children. And I'll find a way to incorporate what I have to incorporate, but we'll do it through play, and we'll do it through me supporting their interests instead of, having it being boring and hard. So those are the things that I think we need to, and I think fairy tales help teachers have that flexibility to do that. I remember we would do, they were very much into Three Little Pigs. And so I got every children's version of Three Little Pigs, and the Goldilocks and the Three Bears. And I got every version I could find of Goldilocks and the Three Bears. And I love the perspective taking when it's Three Little Pigs from the wolf's perspective, or Three Little Pigs from the bear's perspective. And so the Goldilocks and the Three Bears from the bear's perspective. So it's those kinds of things that really get them to think about, oh, well, I'm so egocentric because I'm a child. I didn't see how it looked like from that other person, which you can then use in the classroom.
Right.
So that's how you feel. How do you think they felt? Right. So,
and even giving kids a chance to, like, if you have the props and stuff, if they feel like acting things out, if that's part of their choices of things either inside or outside to play those characters, that's another way to really help them make a connection with, okay, I'm the bear and like you just smashed my chair. Suddenly it's like, wait, what? And so I think, you know, there's so many things that we do that children learn. We know children learn everything through play, but if we view our job as teachers as being able to pay attention to them and to provide them with the materials that they may or may not glom onto. I mean, they, you know, like your class may hate Jack and the Beanstalk and nobody does any of the play and okay,
Right,
then
another
move
one.
on to something else.
Move
I
on.
Yeah, it's you know, I think that's the thing that helps with teachers' resilience is that initiative of let me try something,
Mhm.
and and if it works, that's great. And I know I'm ticking the boxes of the standards. I mean, that's one of the things about like
Oh,
if you put
absolutely.
literacy in there and you're intentional about it, you got all kinds of boxes, you know, giant head gold coins, you know, like,
Mhm.
all right, throw a bunch of gold coins in your math center and like you're whatever, you're doing whatever you're going to do.
Mhm.
Off that as well. But if kids aren't interested in it, then move on. Because if to me, having stories and fairy tales, of course, are my favorite, but you know, whatever stories you use, if you're thinking resilience, and then there's all of the rest of the stuff I need to do.
Absolutely. Easily integrated across every area in your classroom.
Yeah,
Easily,
easily,
easily. And
easily.
the other thing, you know, I teach college courses. So my students who are in my courses haven't ever seen a flannel board. And it just horrifies me.
Yep.
So I have to go get our flannel board and say, how could you use a flannel board to retell a story?
Mhm.
How could children use the flannel board to retell a story? How could you have little figures in the classroom, little things that are loose parts, even
Right.
where children could retell the story? You could have a little story basket with, so children could retell the story. Think of all of the elements that they're getting when they're doing that. And
Puppets.
oh my God, puppets. I have puppets in my classroom. And the students are like, well, how would you use that? And I'm like, here, let me show you. Let's do it. So all
Yeah.
of those pieces and materials that we've replaced with computers and iPads.
Hmm. And even like music and movement, like with
Oh, yeah.
Jack and the Beanstalk. I mean, he steals the harp. How many kids have heard harp music? I mean, there you can go onto YouTube and you can find harp music of any like I found like heavy metal harp music, I like all the way to very gentle stuff, and to expose kids to
Different stuff.
like the different sounds and have them move to it is one way you can use that harp music. But the other thing is, how many of us use music when we're trying to get kids to settle down, like for rest time? And harp music is perfect for that. Not the heavy metal stuff so much, but the but more quiet, you know, like
Oh,
think about like integrating, because if you use the same music day after day and you're expecting children to like relax and connect with their own thoughts during a rest time, I mean, we all get bored with stuff. So switch it up and tie it into the story. And you're, again, I just visualize this network of all of these connections they're making just
mhm.
based on a simple story and the many images in it, and how you can use that in your classroom to keep things fresh for the kids and for us as teachers. I
Oh,
mean,
absolutely. And just, and I'm sure, I hope, if you're a listener, you had people read fairy tales to you. I don't think that's happening with our current children.
mhm,
And so fairy tales and nursery rhymes are huge resources for you to use in your classroom. And people will say, oh, they're too scary. Oh, stop. Come on. I bet they're going home and watching some god awful horror film. And fairy tales, fairy tales have lessons in them that build all of those characteristics that Stephanie's been talking about. Stephanie, this was amazing as always.
thank you so much, Deb. It was always
Any
fun.
closing comments before we wrap up?
No, if you want fairy tales, go to 398.2 in your public library and you'll see tons of them. Easy
There
to
you
find.
go.
Ask any children's librarian if you wonder, and understand that, as Deb said, we as adults are reading fairy tales with a different eye than children hear them. And so if you say, oh my goodness, this will be scary, children, especially if it's read or told to them as opposed to shown on a screen, children will imagine what they can handle. And I've never had a child complain about a scary fairy tale.
There you go.
It's one that I presented with love.
Yes. Yeah. So try something new. See what your kids are interested in and bring in some fairy tale stories that have different versions of that fairy tale. Start with one, and then you can say, I have another book with this fairy tale. We would do all sorts of, I would say, what was different? And what was the same? And we had rich, wonderful conversations. All right, don't go anywhere while I close this out. To learn more about IPA USA, please visit our website at ipausa.org. And until next time, keep on playing.